Hello, how are you all? I hope you're doing well. Let's talk about Hollywood for a second. Stephen Dorff recently gave an interview with the UK Independent, and it sort of was going around online. And he specifically used a word to describe the comic book movie thing that has been happening for quite some time. And he used the word embarrassing. Now, that stuck out to me because I was recently thinking about one movie in particular. It's not a comic book movie. It's not in that genre, but it is a film that is coming out, a Hollywood movie. And when I watched it, I thought to myself, this is embarrassing. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit in this Stephen Dorff interview and a few other criticisms of just the state of Hollywood and sort of our movie making art machine as it is right now and why I think it is that way. But first, the movie I'm talking about, I'm sure you've seen a lot of other commentators talk about this film, but this is a BET film that's coming out, I don't know when. But the trailer for it was so cringy that there were people that literally thought that this had to be a parody. It looks like an SNL parody of a movie. And here's just a few seconds of the trailer. I'll link to the whole thing below if you want to see it. But if you look at the like to dislike in the comment section, it got completely ratioed online, which always gives hope back into humanity. But here's a few seconds of the film.
Tell me about your new neighbors.
They're black. Do you mind keeping it down? If you don't comply, I'll tell the manager.
Somebody's taking home security serious.
Hi, I am Karen Drexler. I'm your neighbor. You need to be taking your trash cans off the curb right when the trash is picked up.
And it's called Karen. I feel bad for all Karens out there. That name has just really gotten it this past year. But that is an actual film. It's not a parody, which you kind of have to remind yourself when you're watching it. But anyway, let's shift a little bit and talk about Stephen Dorff, and then I'll give you a few other criticisms of Hollywood and kind of my thoughts on the whole thing. And some of these will seem like they're coming from different areas and criticizing different things, whether it's individuals in Hollywood or the movie making machine itself. But I do think it's all sort of intertwined, and this goes right back into sort of the decline in the decline in ratings and things like the Oscars and the Golden Globes and how sort of it's imploding on itself. And it really, Hollywood has no one else to blame for itself, I believe. But Stephen Dorff, he says comic book movies are ruining Hollywood, and he says he's embarrassed for Scarlett Johansson. So this is what he did with the UK Independent. You have actors that don't have a clue what they're doing. You have filmmakers that don't have a clue what they're doing. We're all in these little boxes on these streamers, TV, film. It's all one big cluster of content right now. I still hunt out the good stuff because I don't want to be in Black Widow. He goes, it looks like garbage to me. It looks like a bad video game. I'm embarrassed for those people. I'm embarrassed for Scarlett Johansson. I'm sure she got paid $7 million, but I'm embarrassed for her. I don't want to be in those movies. I really don't. I want to find that kid director that's going to be the next Kubrick, and I'll act for him instead. So someone else that recently came out and criticized the whole Marvel movie thing or comic book movie genre, Marvel in specific, was Martin Scorsese, and his friend Francis Ford Coppola actually came out in his defense and agreed and said when Martin Scorsese says that the Marvel pictures are not cinema, he's right, because we expect to learn something from cinema. We expect to gain something, some enlightenment, some knowledge, some inspiration. I don't know that anyone gets anything out of seeing the same movie over and over again. Martin was kind when he said it's not cinema. He didn't say it's despicable, which is what I say is what it is. Okay, so that's what they said. I'm not even joking. Right after I read this is from Daily Wire. Right after I read this, a new article on the Daily Wire came out And what was the headline? New comic mini-series reveals newly woke Captain America who questions the American dream. And that's what it, and I will say this, I got into acting a long time ago because I love movies, but I would go to movie festivals all the time, film festivals. I would volunteer at film festivals. To me, a good film or a good movie or a good show, when you're finished watching it, you're either really entertained or you walk away just kind of feeling like you're a better person, whether you saw something really cool or really funny or really beautiful or something inspiring or you learned a new story. And that to me is what cinema really is. And when you keep making the same thing over and over again, you're flatlined. You leave, you're not any better or worse, you just wasted a few hours. And I think there are several reasons why they do this, why they make the same thing over and over again. And I think it's even true for the music industry. A lot of songs on the top 40s I've noticed within the past few years, it all sort of seems to be the same thing and there's really no substance under it. It's just a bunch of beats and a few melodies, and it's like the same few words just being repeated over and over again on the same subject over and over again, about going out, about spending money, looking cool, drinking, doing drugs, whatever. That's why I'm such a big Tom MacDonald fan, and I like to make a lot of videos going through his music videos because I appreciate what he's doing. Sorry about that. But I think there's several reasons. One, because it's a formula that they have seen works in the past, so they'll just keep using that formula. And two, I do think it's because sort of several things. One, it's Hollywood has gotten so liberal and everyone is so afraid to speak out. Everyone is so afraid to have their own mind. They're so afraid to offend someone. They're so afraid of being canceled. Even Donald Glover recently said something about this. He said a lot of art or movies or entertainment right now is just plain boring because everyone is so afraid of getting canceled or taking a risk or stepping outside of, what we've been told is right think. Even Candace Owens recently said on her show, or somewhere, I was watching her on a podcast, she said, you have no idea how many celebrities will call me and tell me that they agree with everything I say and that they just are so afraid to speak out that they can't say anything. They just have to nod their head and smile and get along. And I was never, ever famous or booked anything huge in Hollywood, but I do remember right around the time when, this is one of the reasons I speak out now, right around the time when Donald Trump was elected, I would go to like events or parties or just be at my job, and how many people would just want to engage you in politics and want to talk about politics and bash on President Trump, and how many times I just had to smile and nod and just smile and nod just so I wouldn't cause a scene or get into trouble or have someone call me a terrible name. And that's an awful feeling to not be able to speak your mind. And even my friends, like all of our conversations were just so empty. It was about the same thing because you're just so afraid to offend someone or to say the wrong thing, and it stinks. And that's why, it's so much more freeing to speak your own mind and make your own thing and speak your own words instead of words that are being written for you. I want to read you, Joe Rogan recently commented on Hollywood too, and it kind of goes into that whole thing. So he said on his podcast, and he's talking about the whole Hollywood industry, and he said that industry has made a bunch of effing insane people because they were already going on insane before. They needed a lot of attention already, and then on top of that, they get rejected over and over and over again. Talking about auditioning and being turned down, he said most people are bitter and most people are weirded out in Hollywood, and they adopt these liberal sensibility ideologies, and they don't necessarily do it because they've thought these things through. I mean, occasionally you get a Mark Ruffalo type who will really go all in on things, but most of them are not. Most of them are just nonsense people, and those nonsense people will get on stage and they'll say things like at the Academies or the Grammys, they'll talk about, this is what we have to do. This is what we have to make sure we support this. It's the effing horses. Okay, he was joking about that, but you understand the point that he's making. When they have, what they have in Hollywood is this just slew of opinions that they have adopted because they think it will be beneficial for their career. I would go on these auditions and I would see these effers that were like lost in this world of being chosen for things, and that's what shapes the entire mindset of that part of the country. And these are the people that are making our content right now, and now that climate is even worse because now politics have just seeped into every aspect of Hollywood, and if you say the wrong thing, all of a sudden you're not going to get that show that you desperately need, or you're not going to get hired on this project, or worse, you'll be canceled or blacklisted. People that make our art. So naturally, things are going to be more boring and uninteresting if the people that are responsible for making film and things that are supposed to be interesting are so afraid to offend everyone. Of course it's going to be boring. Of course it's going to be embarrassing and cringy to watch, like Karen, or like some of these comic book movies or shows. And not all of them. There have been some great ones, but not anything like we used to have. I was recently watching, and it's funny too because I was watching this with a very liberal friend. One of my favorite genres of movies are dark comedies. And we were watching, it came out a long time ago, Drop Dead Gorgeous. It has, I think Kirstie Alley was in it. There are a bunch of people in this movie. And we were watching the movie, and while we were watching it, my jaw dropped I don't know how many times because it is so not politically correct. And I was thinking, but it's a funny movie. It really is actually a brilliant dark comedy. It's off, but that's what a dark comedy should be. But my mouth dropped because I was like, there, and even my friend who's super liberal who likes the movie, we were both like, there is no way this would be made today. No way. Impossible. No studio would make this film today. And I see a lot of comedies like that, even from a few years ago, that I'm like, there's no way this would be made. And it's a shame because, I mean, that's what makes good and interesting art, and even comedy or whatever genre of film is supposed to be pushing the limit, but everyone's so scared to push the limit. I'll tell you one. One of my favorite shows is, of all time, is, of course it was before my time, but it's I Love Lucy. It's one of my all-time favorite shows. I can watch any episode any amount of times and I will still laugh. But that show even was groundbreaking and pushed the envelope. That was the first interracial couple on TV ever. And they were actually told, no, you can't do that, because it had never happened before. So what Lucy did is her and Ricky Ricardo took their show and they took it on tour to prove that America did want to see an interracial couple and they would be okay with doing that. It was Hollywood that was like, no, people aren't ready for that. We can't do that. So instead of having it televised, they took it on tour and did their own thing. And Hollywood saw that people, in fact, wanted to see that. So that's when they were able to get picked up and have a TV show. Lucy started out on a radio show and they wanted to give her a television show. She wanted Ricky to play her husband and they were afraid to do that. But eventually, you know, after she stepped out and did her own thing, they realized that America is ready for that. They do want to see that. So that's another example of how pushing the envelope creates amazing stuff. But if you're afraid to push the envelope, or if you're afraid to offend or do this or that, then you're going to end up with boring, embarrassing art. Anyway, those are my thoughts on everything. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you later. Bye.